Whoa! Yes, boys, yes, we are back and we are doing Mark Tremonti. A dying machine, boys. A dying machine. A dying machine. A dying machine. Wow, this is dying. You see, it's dead. It's fucking dying. Oh no, mate. Oh no. This is actually a good watch. Fact. Now, this is the first record I've heard from Mark Tremonti, who is obviously responsible for carrying the noughties American alt metal scene with quality and substance on the guitar, previously being the guitarist for Creed and Alter Bridge. Both bands, admittedly, I hold some preconceptions about, although I've heard Blackbird and Fortress are supposed to be fair dinkum, and I've heard nothing but good things about Tremonti's individual ability and went into this record with my expectations set for some hard, crispy alt metal with a tinge of flair and catchiness, which this record full well delivers on, with a sense of songwriting already well rotted and as stainless as steel. And the guitar tones throughout this record are steeled appropriately to the genres the songs are enshrined in, which is more than just alt rock and alt metal, by the way. I suppose there's no better way to describe his effectiveness than how the album kicks off with the already overplayed Diamond Head emulation with Bringer of War, but quickly this song breaks into several interchangeable tempos, most of them remaining fast and driving, with the riffs feeling particularly crisp and catchy. But it's the solo here that really showcases Tremonti's efficient style of guitar playing. The man always just has this knack of finding the right rudiments at the right intervals. And the flow throughout this song is as smooth skin. And this song alone touches on many genres, from classic 70s hard rock to the new wave of British metal to American alternative rock and thrash metal to even a genty breakdown towards the end, which the rest of the album follows suit with. The following track is a fantastic example of this, as the punchy rhythmic drumming and riffs provide the perfect backboarding for overplayed wahoos that remain infectious, of course, although less so with repeated listens. And again, there's another crazy solo here that I absolutely adore. And even in the track after this one, there's a very distinctly southern tinged sludge metal inflection to both the vocals and the guitar riffs, not unlike some of Mastodon's poppier stuff. And what about Throw Them to the Lions with those fantastic popping riffs, the energy and the tempo, the transitional movement, it's all energizing and fantastically put together. And Tribe C's guitar work is another fucking fantastic highlight all the way through as well. Everything from the shimmering tremolos to the Ackerfeld-esque chord progressions. Now, I won't describe every song here with painstaking detail, as there are about 14 of them, a lot of which follow the very same predictable verse-chorus-verse formulas, with an occasional solo to varying degrees of success. And formula is very much the correct word to use here, as a lot of the emulations of melodeath and sludge metal, prog metal, gent, and mainstream rock contains a lot of genericisms that sound good nonetheless, just not that creative in of themselves. And put simply, there are just too many songs here, about 4 too many for me at least. That's not to say individually that the other songs aren't as good or have no variations in instrumentation, it's just that it's exhausting as an album listening experience for the lack of quality control and the predictable song structures. Some albums obviously succeed with this kind of drawn out, all-encompassing track listing like Exile on Main Street, but it's simply too much for this conventional approach to songwriting and terrain already well mapped. And yeah, that's basically it. I really do require from a record with 14 songs a little more adventurous song structuring, or otherwise it just becomes doomed to mind-numbing predictability and boredom, most especially with repeated listens. Of course, there is still a healthy amount of diversity, but overwhelmingly my main intuition with this record is a lack of imagination and adventure. Everything feels a little too familiar and without a force of personality or color. It doesn't help that Tremonti's singing is a bit hit and miss throughout, despite his best impersonations of Corey Taylor. Trust being one of the worst examples, as his notes just get drawn out needlessly. There's a lot of crooning here, and it's a shame given that the lyrics have a potential for being quite emotional, because I don't know, the singing just quite isn't for me. And yeah, to be fair, I can understand why Tremonti didn't want to cut so many of the tracks here, given the consistency in grooves and crispy guitar work, the flow, and what seems like fairly involved and personal lyrics. And yeah, almost every track here has its own highlight, whether that be a groove or a solo or some punchy feels or an individual spark from the vocals. For example, even though I don't like Trust overall, I can still really appreciate the bass work coming underneath all the while. It's very appetizing, not to mention the flow and transitions are really good. And thankfully, yes, again, there are variations in instrumentation, with even Mark saying that he tried to make this album his most dynamic and diverse one, yet this being no more apparent than on the closer Found, and just how he basically tries to rip off Massive Attack. You know, it's a truly disparate track from the rest of the album, otherwise sweltering with the most straightforward of rock songs. Honestly though, that song doesn't really make much sense to me, but I suppose if you were to put that track anywhere, it would be in the bookends or slotted straight down the middle if conceptually the record happened to be in two halves. Another real departure from the outward metal is fucking The First The Last. I mean, I don't know which bands this hokey alt-rock track sounds like exactly, but I know the vocal melody in the chorus is very familiar. Still though, man, it's catchy as fuck, and the progression of the instrumentation is disarmingly well built. Some other songs succeed in being just as delectably catchy, a lot like Sin being a truly barn-stomping fucking banger with amazing solos, vocal passages, lyricism, and melodic guitar tones interwoven besides genty chugs and punchy drumming, all progressing with the professionalism of a flight attendant. So yeah, all in all, this is not a bad album at all. In fact, it's executed very well. It's just, you know, I have to reinstate my indifference towards Tremonti's vocals at times, reinforcing my intuition that this record simply required a bit of trimming with the amount of songs and lengthening of others in duration, which they only find the winning formula of in A Dying Machine, the song. Of course, an argument could be made about the punchiness and the poppiness of these song lengths and how that serves the album well. However, I think only to the extent that the choruses are catchy, and some are definitely lacking on this album, from The Sky, Make It Hurt, Trust, amongst others. I mean, even as the silence becomes me's fucking melody is very similar to me to a lot like Sin and Trust, and not necessarily in the best way. Now though, there's nothing offensively bad about this record all up though. It's pretty great. 3.3 for me, I reckon. Just not for every mood, but good for a barbecue, you know, good with some mates in a cruise, fucking whatever, boys. Yeah, like a cruise ship. Pretty fucking enjoyable, all things considered, and constructed like an engine. A generic engine, but, you know, an engine nonetheless. Hope you enjoyed my review. That's simple, really. I hope you just have a fucking good one, and yeah. That's it, boys. Woo!